In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. The earth was without form and void, and darkness was on the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the face of the waters.
I want you to think about the longest week of your life, a week you can clearly remember because of how tired you were left at the end of it. Now I want you to think about what you did after that week. See, one of the worst weeks of my life was my freshman year of football camp. I went to Mountain View, so go Toros, and every year we would go to Williams, Arizona for a week-long football camp. We would have these things called 3-a-days, meaning that we would have practice 3 times a day, plus morning and night conditioning. Now, I don't know if my coaches were psychotic, they hated us, enjoyed pain, hated happiness, or a combination of all 4, but I'm pretty sure they wanted to kill us. And like I said, we would have 3 practices a day, which included a lot of running, and if someone messed up, which would happen quite often, we would have to do these things called burpees. Then we had morning conditioning, which included waking up at 4 a.m. to my coach screaming, "It's a great day to be a Toro," and making us run on double yellow lines in the street for a mile. And then night running was just a slight jog up a mountain, all this and more for 5 days straight. So, 5 days later, and an ungodly amount of ibuprofen, I made it home to my nice and clean bed, where I proceeded to sleep for close to 24 hours, and it was the best sleep I had had in my life. Last week, Justin explained to us how and what God created in his 6 days. By no means am I comparing my freshman year of football camp to God creating the world, but I think we can learn something from both. From my freshman year of football camp story, we can learn that playing football is a really bad idea. Now, from the creation story, we can learn that God calls us to rest, just like I did after football camp. See, Justin only covered 6 days, and this morning we're going to be talking about what God did on the 7th day. Genesis 2:1-3 says, "Thus the heavens and the earth were completed in all their vast array. By the 7th day, God had finished the work he had been doing. So on the 7th day, he rested from all his work. Then God blessed the 7th day and made it holy, because on it he rested from all the work of creating that he had done." This rest we find here in our scripture today is referred to as Sabbath. Throughout the whole Bible, and even today, having a Sabbath is a day of rest devoted to God so that we can worship him. It sounds pretty easy, right? Like I said before, we see the Sabbath throughout Scripture. God tells Adam and Eve to rest after their creation. We later see God remind the people of Israel to keep the Sabbath and not forget it. And fast forward, we even see Jesus taking a Sabbath day in Mark 1:35. It says, "Jesus got up and left the house, went off to a solitary place where he prayed." All right, cool. We know what Sabbath is now, but why is it important? Why is God calling me to rest in a time where I don't have time to rest? To answer this question as best as possible, we really need to understand God's intention of Sabbath. We know that God had just got done working, so he rested. This resting from work has a specific word in Hebrew. It's called Shabbat. It means to literally stop working. The second word we can find if we are nerds and read the Bible in Hebrew is nauk, which I probably said wrong, but it means to dwell or settle. So from those 2 words, we can tell that God's intention behind Sabbath is for us to stop working and to dwell or settle with him. Sounds nice, right? It's because it is. Another thing that we need to know is interesting about Sabbath is that we are called to keep it holy. Now, before I skip over that word holy, like we do so often, I want to talk about it for a second because it's important. I found this definition after a Google search of holy definition. Holy means not only sanctified, separated unto God, but also different, distinct from everything that is common. Only God is different, distinct from all things. Hence, he is holy. Holiness is his nature. He has chosen us to be holy. To be holy means to be different and to be distinct. And God made the Sabbath day holy, meaning it is different and distinct from any other day. It's different from a day off or vacation. It's different from work or a school day. On a day off, you don't really do anything. You do whatever you want, which is great, but that's not the Sabbath. Sabbath is not watching Netflix in bed all day. It's not playing video games for an unhealthy amount of hours, and it's not sleeping all day. Sabbath is a time designed by God to dwell with God and not focus on working. It is a time to stop and reflect on who God is and what He does for us. It is a time meant to worship what God has done in our life. It is a time to step back from everything, just as God stepped back to reflect on His creation. Now, Jesus takes this idea of Sabbath a step further. Matthew 11:28-30 says, "Come to me, all who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls." The context of this verse is important here. Jesus realized that the people were weary and burdened. They were burnt out. They were also in need of rest from work, Shabbat, and in need of being in the presence of God, Nauk. So what does Jesus do? Like for all of us, He gives us a friendly reminder. Jesus points us back to the Garden of Eden, where we see God rest for the first time. He reminds us of the original intent for Sabbath: to be with God, appreciate creation, and to be with each other. So what does a Sabbath look like today for us in 2021? What does being with God look like? What does being together look like? And where do we see God's creation? See, the beauty behind all these questions is there's no right answer. This looks different for all of us because God communicates with us in different ways. My Sabbath consists of starting the day with some quiet time. This time is intentionally designed to quiet my mind and to slow down, to focus on God and dwell with Him. Then I start my day. I get ready, grab coffee, and go on with my day. No work or school, rather a day focused on dwelling with God, appreciating His creation, and being in community. You may be thinking to yourself, Coleman, you just went on about all this stuff you have to do during the Sabbath, and then you're telling me you do some quiet time and that's it. To an extent, yes, that is it, but we just learned last week in Justin's message that our God is a God of detail. I think we want to make the Sabbath something really elaborate and complicated. We want to not leave our house and be super spiritual. And if that's you, great, do your thing, but understand that the Sabbath is about being with God, appreciating creation, and being with each other. Sabbath is about the small moments, the moments where you sit back and have a small window of time where you can feel God moving in your heart. It's about the moments where you're driving and you think to yourself, wow, God made all of this, the mountains, the ocean, God made it all. It's about the moments where you're around a table with your people and your community, laughing, eating, and living life with one another. That's what the Sabbath is about. Sabbath is dwelling with God, focusing on Him, asking Him how to look at situations or things you're going through, celebrating the great things He has done in your life, being with God. Sabbath is appreciating what God has made in your life, the opportunities He has provided you, the people He has put in your life, what He has done through you to grow the kingdom, what God is creating through and in you. Sabbath is being in community with your people, enjoying time with friends and family, appreciating the community that God has put in your life. CSM, what would it look like if we took a Sabbath during the week? If we stopped and rested and recentered our hearts to God, if we spent time in His presence, if we looked at His creation in awe and wonder, and we spent time in community just as God intended life to be like. Now, I want to leave you with a challenge. I want to challenge everyone listening to start participating in some form of Sabbath. If you have never taken part in Sabbath before, no worries. All I want you to do is start with 20 minutes of time devoted to dwelling with God, appreciating His creation, and being in community. From that point on, slowly increase the time to whatever you feel comfortable with, but push yourself. Pick a day where you spend this time and don't change that day. Sabbath is about rhythm. Be consistent. And the last thing I want to leave you with is begin and end with prayer. Sabbath is about dwelling with God. It's about appreciating His creation and being in community. Love you, CSM.